Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today, we're going to go over the class syllabus and the online resources and way we can do this entire class online. It'll be centered around GitHub. But first, let's find out how to get there. This link is also in the description. But the easiest way to start to get to the class repository is to just type in lncrna.io/teaching. So that's lncrna.io/teaching. It's also in the description. You'll go here and you just click right here on any of those really, and you're at our class wiki on GitHub. So GitHub has the ability, you have a site here called Wiki, where we have the course syllabus and also links to the YouTube channel, which you, I guess, know where that is now. And we'll have all the lectures here, lecture slides, our exercises, and I'll go through sort of each of these. But first, let's start with the class syllabus to just kind of get an overview of what this will look like. So first, we'll have an introductory lecture video that's already on YouTube here, so you can just click there and go right to it and click here, and you'll get the lecture slides from that video. And then we'll get started by installing a bunch of things we'll need: terminals, FTP clients, ways of doing file transfer, a little easier. But we'll walk through all that, and all the links are here if you want to set it up on your own. Then we'll get an introductory lecture by John and Matt in the BioFrontiers IT department on the best practices of using the server. So this class will be held on the Fiji server. We'll be doing our studio as our viz also on the server. So this way we're all working in the same place and can share file paths and other ways of collaborating. So it's really nice of them to allow us to have that space. We're using up a lot of room. And so they're going to give us an introduction to what is it to mean to be on a server and how to move in and request help in other aspects. We'll have a lecture on data reproducibility. And I won't point out every lecture here, but the way the class will work is we'll have RMD files already pre-cooked for you. And you'll essentially just go through these and learn the lessons in the Markdown. This way, if the class goes too fast, you'll have these files here. We'll also record a pre-cooked version of each of these RMD files. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. So that way, really, they should all run as is. That's never always the case, and I'm sure there'll be bugs here and there. But this is why, again, I think anybody can take this class, is you can start doing these exercises, and there'll be a video talking through them. And I'll show you an example of how that will work in a second. But you can see this is early. We're not quite fully done developing the entire files yet. But each lecture will have an RMD file if it's relevant in what you'll need to know in the code, and maybe some exercises to do additional tests. So we'll really use these files to learn the basics of Unix and or Bash and R using exercises that are practical to what we're going to try and do. We'll start to install Nextflow. We'll run a humongous data set, visualize the data set using UCSC and other resources. Then we'll explore the larger pre-cooked data set after having run individual ones. Again, you'll see there'll be an RMD file to work you through exercises, understanding what types of data formats you're looking at and what types of code would be used and why, with a lot of written explanation. So each one you can see here will have a link eventually once they're done, and you can just click on them. So let's see what this actually looks like here. So we can go to O2 bashing data. I'm going to bring in a terminal here. So you can see here we have a bunch of writing. This is just your first introduction to bash and the commands that are maybe obvious to some of you, but we'll go through examples and get more and more difficult, understanding the pipe and awk, grep, and little bits of code in order for you to test how things work. For loops are quite powerful in bash. So for example, you could be reading here and be like, oh, I didn't understand this in class. And you can just simply cut and paste from here. Even though it's an R markdown file, this is a bash script. It'll be denoted in the file and just simply paste it in. And yay, we can see biochem 5631 is great 42 times, just because that's a very special number. So that's what a bash exercise will look like, and we'll go through this. We'll even use some aspects to print out class groups in using a for loop to randomly generate class groups. So that's kind of what that one would look like. If we take one of these, if you go here and anytime you're on GitHub, you can go to the code, go to the main part of the GitHub, where you can see here's the lessons that are already starting to populate this GitHub. And again, all your resources here, common file paths as well that we tend to use. And we just did an example of what the bashing R, or bashing data with bash. And we'll do this on actual real data as well. And then for an introductory lesson to R, for example, we don't want to go through all the basics, but more of the practical aspects. So if we want to see what that looks like, we will be working in RStudio on the Fiji server. So that would simply look like this, where we open up. This is what the RStudio will look like. We'll go into this in much more detail during the class, but this is what one of these R exercises were, because we learned last year it was better to walk through each stage, both in bash and in R, so you can see the commonalities and the differences. But again, you'll have a bunch of text explaining what's happening here, and how to use some basic things you'd want to do, like finding an intersection between two files, or for instance, we're going to look at DNA binding proteins and you want to know how many peaks there are across the data set. You could just run this line of code here, and then we can plot it. R has great plotting features. This is a very introductory lesson, so we'll get into more advanced plotting, but with a click of a button, we can see a bunch of information about this data. And so it'll walk you through slowly into reading into tables, searching tables, intersecting tables, and then more into how do you plot in R. And R has so many basic statistical principles built into it. You'll just go through and all of this will be runnable. And we use class time to debug and expand on these lessons as well. So that's what our markdown file will look like. That's our Fiji viz setup there. And so after we go through all these classes, what we'll tend to do is clean these up into a different folder. And I'll just show you an example of last year's GitHub and what the sort of final product of all this will look like. Let's see here. So after we've gone through the lectures, those will be put somewhere else. And what we'll end up with here is nice folders of each of the different analyses we did. This ended up as a manuscript last year, but now you can just open one of these markdown files and you'll have all the code, some text to explain things. And what's nice about this is we'll knit them together, explain that in another class, but all the data is here. And this is what we really like about reproducibility is here's your code, here's the product of that code. And if you get a different product, then there's ways to debug. But this is almost 100% reproducible, or is 100% reproducible. based on the code, you will get these kind of plots. So that's the kind of format we'll work at as we start to build new documents outside the class, our markdowns. And then finally, we have another online resource, again, on the Git wiki page, but we used Slack last year. We still have a few members on it, but real time was great because in class, we could easily just paste and cut code, troubleshoot, work together. It's interesting how some students came up with new solutions that we hadn't thought of and new packages. So this was just a way in real time we could all do things. People found interesting things along the way, would put them into cool commands. And then we also had a lot of direct messaging. Is this course is based on teamwork. We have different teams here, and in general, just things about the class, some fun pictures, sharing papers. Just a great way to communicate. Actually, during class, we'll be on Zoom, and we find that most of the communication will actually occur on Slack, and then we'll go into different breakout rooms and other aspects as that. So this is how it sits right now. It'll get much more populated, but really everything you need to take this class is right here on the wiki site. This is the main page, or sorry, on the GitHub. This is the main page. You can go to the wiki and you'll see all these, especially the syllabus, where you can then go through, click on a file that you're intrigued by. There'll be a video associated with that exercise where either Michael and I are actually running through the code and running it and explaining verbally the markdown essentially. So I think that's it. Once you get to the class 2021 repository in the Boulder Rinn Lab GitHub, you should have everything you need to take this course. And with that, I forgot to mention, we recommend people subscribe if you're interested in taking this class to this YouTube channel, because we'll be having updates throughout. We have the lectures planned out, but if last year serves, we will have updated lectures of things that we found better or worse, and sort of in real time debug the class together. So we'll hope to see you here again soon. And in the meantime, enjoy your coding.